Yeah, we may need to.
You were making something tasty. It looked like magic wands or
Yeah, no,
something.
they were pretzel sticks.
Yeah, yeah. They look like magic wands, gold sparkles on them.
Caramel, and then you put them in the chocolate, and then I put
And
sprinkles
sprinkles
all
on
over.
them. Yeah, which is why they look like a magic wand.
I have to take my sand now.
Oh, no, I think she's gonna give us sand at $5.
Okay. Is it the sand handout?
It is definitely a lovely place to work. It's like my house for the ladies that work for You can be the seating chocolatiers.
Good morning, and welcome to First Parish Brewster. We are a Unitarian Universalist welcoming congregation of people of diverse philosophies and beliefs, people of various cultures and races, sexual orientations, gender identities, abilities, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your path, may this be a place of rest and restoration on your journey. I'm Twinks Hastings, Director of Lifespan Religious Education, happy to be welcoming you to the service today with our interim minister, Rev. Karen Anderson, and our music director, Kaisa Fern, and our accompanist for the day, Lucy Banner. Our services are recorded and available on our YouTube channel midweek. Masks are now optional in worship, although we do have 2 places where masks remain required, and that's the top right balcony and the spot right below it. Please silence your cell phones. We ask that everyone wear their name tags or fill out a sticker name tag in an effort to be more welcoming. We also welcome and celebrate the noises, movements, and mirth that little ones bring to our worship. For those of you who are first-time visitors, welcome. If you'd like to learn more about First Parish, please fill out a welcome card found on the back of the pew in front of you and place it in the offertory basket. Welcome on this morning that we make sacred by our presence together. A big welcome to people streaming. We are glad that you're here too. In community news announcements, on October 2nd from 11 to 12 in the parish room, Tia Cross is leading a free 1-hour workshop sharing her skills and strategies learned working with folks with dementia. The workshop is open to all. And today at 2 p.m. is our September Meeting House speaker series, Voices of Cape Cod. Leslie Jonas will speak on the land and water conservation from an Indigenous perspective, screening her 3 films, Earth, Water, and Air. All are welcome. And a big thank you to the group of volunteers who turned up yesterday to help with the refurbishment of the children's area downstairs. I invite you all to come by after worship. It is looking good. We're like 92% done. So thank you all who turned up yesterday. Welcome to worship. It is so good to be together. Oh, I forgot one thing. If you don't have a plate of sand on a rock near you, by your feet, can you raise your hand and we'll make sure you get one?
Is it one per customer?
1 per customer. There are some up in the loft, by the way. Good morning. When I was growing up, people could tell some really terrible jokes. Jokes that, like demeaned a group of people, like Polish jokes or racist jokes, sexist jokes, homophobic jokes. All jokes that kept people out of a circle. All jokes that made someone the other or a stranger or even danger. I know people still tell those jokes, but not as much as they used to, at least. I never really loved those jokes that much because I always thought they were just mean in their kind of presentation of them. But I also think I didn't get them because I grew up in a Norwegian American family, and when you are Norwegian American, you don't make fun of other people, you make fun of yourself. So there are all these jokes, Ole and Lena jokes, they're called, where Lars is the sidekick of all of them. Now, I had a grandfather who was really kind of a ham, and he knew all the Ole and Lena jokes, but let me give you an example. So Lars, his wife dies, and he calls up the funeral home, and he says, "Yeah, this is Lars Larson, and my wife has died." And the woman at the funeral home says, "Oh, Lars, I'm so sorry to hear that. I tell you what, tell me where you live and we'll come pick her up." And Lars says, yeah, I live at 19 Eucalyptus Street. And the woman says, well, Lars, could you spell eucalyptus for me? And Lars thinks for a moment, and he goes, well, I tell you what, I'll drag her over to Oak Street. You can pick her up over there. Now, they are silly and ridiculous, that is for sure. They're kind of stupid, right? But what I do like about them is that they kind of expose that game of I'm better than you. And that was important to me, I think, growing up. It also reminds me why I think we come to church week after week, right? We come to remind each other that we are here to include everyone rather than exclude everyone. We remind each other that we're not here to laugh at other people, we're here to laugh with other people, right? So it's so good to be with you ridiculously silly people. We're all in this together, am I right? Yes. Okay, you have to answer with, yeah, sure, you know, you betcha. All right, good morning.
All right, we're going to sing an opening song this morning, and I want to teach you a couple different parts to this, and then I'll invite you to rise in body or spirit. So one of the parts is going to be handled by this whole outer row, and that whole outer row, and the two balconies. You're going to ground us in this. We are one world, one voice, one heart beating. We are one world, one voice, one heart beating. We are one world, one voice, one heart beating. I think you got it. And I'll have basses and tenors join that part. All right, now another part for our altos will help you out with this. And we'll do this section right here. Everybody living in this world, everybody's got a voice, let's use it. Everybody living in this world, one heart beating. I'll do it line by line. Everybody living in this world, try that. Everybody living in this world, everybody's got a voice, let's use it. Everybody's got a voice, let's use it. Everybody living in this world, you know that already. Everybody living in this world, one heart beating, one heart beating. All right, and the last part for sopranos and all of you, we are one world. Oh, they're laughing. Yeah, how do you think sopranos feel? We are one world. See, maybe you're all sopranos. We are one heart beating. So let me sing it for you. We are one world. We are one heart beating. We are one world, one heart beating. Let's try it. We are one world. We are one heart beating. We are one world, one heart beating. Got it, sopranos? Okay, and I also have a part for all of you in the free range area. So, guess what I have? Really, this is cool. Maybe you've already played this sometime, but you're gonna hold down the fort, keeping the beat. Like that. You can all do it. There's plenty of room. Not so fast, because we can't sing that fast. One, like, it's such a challenge. There we go. Keep it nice and steady. Do, 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 do. And they'll help you out by,
Like, is this gonna work?
we are one world, one voice, we'd like to invite you to greet your neighbor, say hello. Shall we have them rise in body or spirit? Yeah, you could rise and greet your neighbor. Why not? Wow.
I'm Karen.
I'm Sarah Sheehan, and I grew up in Galway.
You did?
Ja,
Where?
Norsk.
Jag snackar little norsk. Lite norsk. Like,
yeah. My husband and I are going in April, so he's suddenly learning Norwegian. He's already surpassed me.
oh, nice. Yes. That's awesome.
Yeah, I need to study up the jokes.
There you go. All right, I'm going to ask you to please have a seat. Please have a seat. I do think that song's a good example of why world peace is a little complicated. This morning we light our chalice with these words. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Please join in our affirmation words. We believe in love. Love is the doctrine of this church. We believe in truth. The quest for truth is a sacrament. We believe in helping others. And service is our prayer. We believe in the sacredness of life. To the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine.
Good morning, everybody. Does anyone know what holiday our Jewish friends are celebrating this weekend? Does anyone know? Yom Kippur. I heard someone say it. And does anyone know what that holiday is? I know some of you do. Days of Awe and time for atonement. Does anyone know what atonement means? It's a big word. Time for what, sorry? Saying you're sorry. Saying you're sorry. And with that, I want to tell you a story. And this story comes from a small town in Eastern Europe. And there was a really, really, really nice person lived there, but they had a really nasty problem. And their nasty problem was, whenever they heard a story or something about someone, they had to tell their friend, and they had to tell their hairdresser, and they had to tell their baker, and they had to tell everyone about the story they had heard. And so one day, the very, very nice person with the nasty problem learned something about a businessman in town. And they learned that this businessman, they learned something really, really silly about him. And so when they got that piece of gossip, they were so excited to run home and tell their partner and tell their children. And then their children told their friends, and their partner told their friends. And before we knew it, the whole town knew this silly thing about this businessman. And when the businessman heard that everyone knew the silly thing about him, he was so embarrassed. He said, my whole business is going to be ruined. What am I going to do? And so he ran to the rabbi in the town and said, the very, very nice person with the nasty, nasty problem has shared a rumor about me, and now my business is going to be ruined. What can I do? And the rabbi said, "Go send the storyteller to me." So the very, very, very nice person with the nasty problem came by the rabbi, and the rabbi said, "Why are you doing this?" And the storyteller said, well, what I'm sharing is true. I heard this about him, and it's true. And the rabbi said, it does not matter if the story or the information you have about someone is true or false, or you've embellished it. It is not a good idea to share stories about someone and then ruin their business. And so the storyteller, the very, very nice person with the nasty problem, said, "What can I do? How can I make this better?" And the rabbi said, "Do you have a feather pillow at home?" And he was a little bit confused. And he said, well, I'm a businessman. I have lots of feather pillows at home. And the rabbi said, "Well, go get one and bring it to me." So he went home and he got his feather pillow and he brought it back. And the rabbi said, "Open my office window." So he did. He's a little confused. And then the rabbi said, "And cut this pillow open and spread all of the feathers everywhere." And the very, very, very nice person with the nasty problem said, "Really? This is going to cause some mess in your office?" And the rabbi said, "Yes, please do it." So he opened up the pillow and feathers went everywhere, all over his books, out the window, into the street. What a mess. And after 10 minutes, the rabbi said, "Can you now pick up all of those feathers and put them back in the pillowcase?" And the very, very nice person with the nasty problem said, "I cannot. How can I possibly get all of the feathers? They're in the town, they're down the street, they're behind the books. I think the dog ran off with one." And the rabbi said, "Exactly. And that's how it works if we gossip or tell stories. The feathers or the stories get out into the town, and there is no way to bring it all back." And so the rabbi asked that the very, very nice person with the nasty problem found the businessman that he was making the rumors about and asked him to apologize. And he did. And he spent 1 year apologizing for all of the nasty rumors he had spread. And with that, let's sing our children out.
This is a time in our service where we offer our heartfelt gratitude to organizations in our community that help the least of these. This morning's split plate offering is with Native Land Conservancy. The Native Land Conservancy was founded in 2012 and is the first native-run land conservation group east of the Mississippi, working to protect sacred spaces, habitat areas, and other essential ecosystem resources to benefit Mother Earth and all beings, human and non-human. There are a couple of ways that you can give today. Please look at your order of service for how to be able to contribute to the offering. And I invite the ushers to come forward at this time. Let us take the offering mindfully and gratefully.
I just wanted to say a word about the text for this piece that the choir is singing today. This is a Jewish morality law, and the translation of the text is, "The world is sustained by three things: by truth, by justice, and by peace."
Al-Khait. It's the Hebrew word for sin. My rabbi friend points out that the part is pronounced as though you are removing a piece of popcorn from the back of your throat. It helps to feel, he said, that discombobulating feeling as, this is an archery term that signifies that moment when you miss the target entirely. A reminder that for Jews, sin is not about a corrupt or unworthy self, but a matter of missing the mark. A reminder sin entails not a confession of your unworthiness, but the work of correcting your aim. I have always loved that definition of sin rather than its Christian counterpart of believing in a Christ who redeems me from my inescapable sinful nature by dying on the cross. Seems like a lot of work for poor Jesus to do on my behalf, and frankly, it gets me off the hook a little too easily. I also like this version of missing the mark because it has nothing to do with belief. This definition of sin tells me that realignment is possible, that I can ask for a do-over and take better aim. It's a constant kind of relearning of how to be better, be more and more of who I want to be and can be in the world. Can I sin by being greedy? Undoubtedly, I can. I can have an irrational longing for things that I don't really need. Just ask my husband about my shoe collection. So I have to remind myself all the time, right? Like, want what I have, want what I have. I can speak ill of others, frankly. I should keep my mouth shut and remember that Buddhist precept of kind of only speaking when I know it's helpful. I can swear like a sailor, unfortunately, when I'm behind the wheel and the light turns green and I get all ticked off that somebody's not moving. My wrath's poisonous head rears most acutely when I'm late or anxious or just not present. And this call to realignment reminds me that the person in front of me in that car is dealing with worries and pain that can't be seen by just looking at them. The last thing they need, actually, is my rage, when the world is probably already raging at them in a dozen different ways. Realigning myself to me, to others, and the needs of the world isn't always easy. So in this season of the Jewish High Holy Days, the Days of Awe, we are asked, how can we pause? How can we step back and take a moment to just adjust, to be still, to avoid sending unthoughtful arrows out there into the world, because who knows what we may accidentally hit with those arrows that fly past the target. So I would like to invite all of you to get comfortable in your seat. Put your feet flat on the ground. Take a deep breath with me now. And turn inward. On this day, and maybe every day, may we ask ourselves, where am I missing the mark? Where do I need better aim? How might I dull the sharpness of the arrows I throw? Maybe even, is it time for me to put the arrows down? Everyone's walking around with enough wounds already. How's the day asking me to realign myself to that? Let us hold these questions in the quiet sanctuary of our hearts and minds. Let us, for a moment, be calm and quiet and still together. Be still. Be still. Be still. Be still. Be still. Be still. We're in the midst of the Jewish High Holy Days, which mark the beginning of the Jewish calendar, starting with Rosh Hashanah and go all the way until Yom Kippur, which actually starts tonight and into tomorrow. Early in the service of Yom Kippur, the Kol Nidra is chanted, and it is a haunting melody. The Kol Nidra is concerned with the importance of the promise of human behavior. And I want to start out today by sharing with you what one congregation in Washington, D.C. kind of starts off and the whole piece with their congregation by saying these words. Our forebears understood the need for an escape clause in human intention. For despite good intention, all of us make promises we cannot keep. How many of us have fulfilled all that we have vowed? Who among us has not broken a heartfelt promise? Therefore, hear these words. May we here forgive those who have hurt us without deliberating or by accident, as we forgive and pardon fully those who have wronged us. May those whom we have harmed in accident also forgive and pardon us. May we not willfully repeat the wrongs we have committed in the past. May tolerance and justice light our days. Escape clauses indeed. Who among us doesn't need an escape clause? I know I do. Notice I said, who among us doesn't need, rather than who among us doesn't need to offer them, because we all know that forgiveness, right, is not just for the sake of the offender, but also for our own sake. And it's understandable that that single-minded focus of whether someone deserves to be forgiven or not, that is not simply about giving offenders kind of that get-out-of-jail-free card. It's also, and maybe even more importantly, about our freedom, about freeing up our hands and our hearts for things that open us up to the world rather than close us off. Rabbi Harold Kushner wrote this wonderful book years and years ago called Why Do Good Things Happen? Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? I almost got that wrong. Why do bad things happen to good people? And in it, he tells this story of this woman who is really wrestling with forgiveness. And he says that she had gone through a terrible divorce, and she was going back and forth to court with this guy who did not want to have to pay for any child support at all. And she felt kind of miserable all the time. And she said to him, since my husband walked out on us, every month is a struggle to pay the bills, and I have to tell my kids that we don't even have enough money to go to the movies together. How can you tell me to forgive him? How can you even dare to suggest such a thing to me? She said to him. And Kushner said back to her, I'm not asking you to forgive him because he did something that was acceptable. What he did was something that was selfish and mean. I'm asking you to forgive him because he doesn't deserve the power to live in your head and in your heart the way that he does, and he's making you into an angry, bitter woman. And I'd like to see him out of your life emotionally as much as he is physically. But you're still holding on to him. Look at what you've been doing for the last number of years. You stand here in Massachusetts. Meanwhile, he's living in New Jersey with his new wife. He's not thinking about you. Meanwhile, you're waiting to throw that hot coal you have in your hand at him, except the only problem is you're just burning your hand in the process. Ouch. I love how that story kind of helps us see that forgiveness is not just a matter of restoring justice. It actually is a process of recovering ourselves. We do well, I think, to remember that the root of the word forgive literally means to give up, not to make right. Did you catch that? It means to let go, not to make right. The great psychologist Carl Jung once said, this is like my favorite line of all ministry over all the years because I think it's brilliant. Forgiveness is giving up any hope of ever having a better past. Forgiveness is giving up any hope of ever having a better past. Does that resonate with any of you? Damn. Sounds depressing, right, on one level. But it's important to know that Jung wasn't trying to argue against hope. He was just trying to locate it in the right place. For him, as for Kushner, real hope lies not in endlessly trying to fix the past, but in freeing yourself from it, a letting go of the past. One of the last times I did a Yom Kippur service years ago, I handed out stones to everyone, right? So they all had a stone. And I asked everyone to think of the weight of that stone, of the resent they were holding for someone, right? Like hold it in that stone. Almost as if they had it in their pocket and it weighed you down all the time. And I told everyone that I really wanted them to take the stone and just like whip it into a forest or a stream or something, like let it go so you could release your heart from whatever it was that was holding you down. So it wasn't burning your hand anymore. And in letting go, you can offer yourself a great gift. Forgive for your sake, not for another, right? So I did that service, and for weeks, people were like, oh, Karen, that was so awesome. I, released my resent. It was so wonderful. Thank you, thank you. You know, and I'm, on this high because I'm thinking, oh, yay, I helped a bunch of people. Until. And there's always an until. So I get in a car with a parishioner, and we're driving, and there on the dashboard is a rock. And I say to her, I'm like, what's up with the rock? And she goes, well, you gave that to us on Yom Kippur. And I'm like, yeah, but I told you to get rid of it. And she says, and by the way, this was 2 years after the fact. I mean, it's not like it was a month later, right? This was 2 years after I had given her the rock, and it was still on her dashboard. And I said to her, well, why is it still there? And she says, well, I can't seem to get rid of it. I can't let go. I cannot forgive her. And I said, you must be having really quite a hard time. And she goes, I am, and I'm bitter and resentful too. Okay. But I said to her, I'm like, what purpose is that serving you? And she said, I don't know, but for the life of me, I cannot let it go. I have often thought about that story and her saying that to me, why she could not forgive. And it led me to understanding this story that another friend of mine told me. I'm going to call her Sue, but I really have always thought of her as a wise woman. So this wise woman knew that not forgiving was doing more harm than good for herself, but she too could not get there. She told the story of growing up in a household with a dad who had quite a temper, a father who was rigid and judgmental. He was other things too, like we all are, right? We all have shadow and light in us. But through most of her adulthood, she kind of riled against him for passing those things on to her. She felt like they directly came from him and that she too could be kind of angry more often than she wanted to be and judgmental. And she had gone through a whole bunch of therapy and she just could not figure out how to let that go over what her dad had passed on. And then it turns out that her dad died. And at the memorial service, her relatives, mainly his siblings, were telling stories about her dad and how grateful that they were for him taking on the brunt of his dad's anger and abuse, both verbal and physical, so much so that the younger siblings never were harmed by their dad because Sue's dad had always stepped in. And they spoke sincerely about how they were always amazed after taking all of that for so many years. He did not turn out to be their father. He didn't turn out to be Sue's grandfather. That he in many ways had stopped generational abuse. And from their perspective, they were kind of shocked at how he had done the work to not repeat something that was so harmful and damning. And it was there that my friend Sue actually realized she had been holding on to something, this like grudge and resent to her dad without knowing the full story. Without knowing that in many ways, he had done the best that he could with what he himself had been given, and given his past, actually, he had actually moved emotionally quite a far way away from what he had experienced as a child. And she couldn't just now understood that with that real kind of fullness of the story, the playing out of all those aspects of her dad was indeed finally what allowed her to let go and really love her dad completely. Her only regret was that she didn't figure that out before he died. How she had always wanted to get there. Remember, Carl Jung said, "Forgiveness is giving up all hope of ever having a better past." Letting go of the past is in service to a better you, which may, in effect, affect you in little ways sometimes, but sometimes in really big ways. That sometimes comes, I have learned, from seeing that you have to let in the wholeness of the story, the fullness of the pieces and the parts in order to let go. And really, when you think about it, we are so good at telling partial stories about other people sometimes and about ourselves. My friend Sue isn't the only one. We more often than not think the partial story is the full story. We look at our neighbor's family and their perfect kids, and we don't see how they wrestle with generational addiction behind closed doors. We see the surface of the water, that ice reflecting on like an iceberg, but not the giant iceberg below the water. We see the stress and anxiety of our coworker who is edgy and fragile all the time when we are around them, but don't know about the iceberg of care for elderly parents that's underneath the water's surface that is a mixture of shame and a certain amount of pride that they are pulling it off on her meager salary. The truth is, we really can't ever know the breadth of people's lives, even those who live with us all the time, or we grew up with them. I can't say that enough to you. And after all these years of doing ministry, I have never, ever met a family that didn't have either addiction, abuse, or mental illness in their family. Sometimes all three, sometimes just one. But I've never experienced a story where somebody had none of those. It makes me think of the metaphor of weight we hold with forgiveness and how I think I was a little misguided in my attempt to counter the weight. So I found another metaphor that I'm going to use and tell you about. This is a story. It's a parable of two friends, Musa and Naguib. So this pair are traveling through the Persian mountains, and they're going to the city, and as they're going through, they get off their camels and they take a rest next to this river. And they're having this conversation, and it gets kind of heated along the way, And then all of a sudden, they're really angry with each other, and Nagib slaps Musa across the face. And Musa is like, wow, what the heck was that? But then he says to himself, well, I was angry too, and actually I was kind of getting to the same place. And I can't be too mad at him because I almost did the exact same thing. We are alike, and I care for him. And I hate being in a fight. So Musa walks over to a tree, picks up a stick, goes near the river where there's a bunch of sand, and he writes into the sand, "My best friend slapped me." Then the two of them get on their camels and they go to the city. And then they come back, and it had rained a bunch when they get back to this river, and they take a break and they want to swim together. So they get in the water, but Musa's like flailing all over the place and he's having a hard time breathing, and Nagib kind of pulls him in and rescues him, and Musa's taking a deep breath, trying to get his breath back to him. And then he gets up, he walks to his saddlebag on his camel, and he takes out a knife. He walks to the river where there is a rock, and he writes into the rock, "Today my best friend saved me." Now Nagib looks at him and he goes, I don't get it. When I hurt you, you wrote it in the sand, but when I did something good, you put it in the rock. And Musa says, when someone harms you, you should write it in the sand so the winds of forgiveness can wash it away. This way our hearts are free from bitterness and we can renew our friendships. But when someone does something kind for us, we must engrave it in stone in our hearts, so we must never forget it. I love that story. It's a great way to think about forgiveness as having less of a weight on you, right? And having a lighter touch that often we think about in a different way. So I'd like all of us to be Musa today. You all have a plate in front of you. I want you to pull it up. It's on the ground. It should be in front of you, and there should also be a stone next to it. If you don't have one, all right, I want you just to hold those in your lap for a minute. In the story, Musa writes the name of his friend's kindness into the stone. That's a beautiful image. We far too often, I think of kindness more like sand than stone. Something that kind of washes over us and falls through our fingers more often. And yet, when you ask people about kindness, when they tell their stories more often than not, they are substantial and rock-like remembrances that serve as a foundation to their softening to humankind. And what I love about that is the letting go is ironically about holding tight to something. And the only way that we can get there is to let go of the hurt done to us is by remembering the good done to us by those very same jerks. Because that's a thing, right? I mean, I know there are people who are mean out there that pass out meanness like, Halloween candy. But for most of us, that's not really what we wrestle with. Our main conundrums often have to do with the people who are close to us, who are mixed, who have shadow and light in them. But when something bad happens, we write the meanness into the stone, and when they give us kindness, we write it into sand. Instead, we should flip it. Instead of seeing the task of letting go of the rock of resent that hold us, let us see the task of injecting their goodness into the stone. In order to let go, I'm asking you to hold on. The next time you are with your brother who can push your buttons at time, remember his goodness and his kindness. And I want you to keep that stone near you. Hold on to it. Let its weight remind you of his kindness. The next time your coworker brings you to points of frustration or tears, walk back to your desk where you put that stone. And I want you to remember that that coworker is the funniest person who can make you laugh when you need it the most. Now I want you to take that sand and I want you to write that exact same person into the sand. Just write it in there. Those are going to get reshuffled, and it will be gone, right? But you're holding on to something that matters far more in that stone. My husband, Scott, once wrote a letter to a friend who was dying, and in it he said this: I'm not sure you remember this, but I called you kind once. You thanked me, but resisted. I found it curious and asked you why, and you didn't want to elaborate. And you only said, "That's a big word." It made me like you even more. Kindness, it's a big word. It's as big and heavy as forgiveness, maybe bigger. May you hold on to kindness to let go. May kindness in all its infinite weight and girth serve as your strength and as your anchor. May it be so. Amen.
Now we invite you to rise in body or spirit and place your plate of sand gently on the pews or on the ground. We'll be singing together from the gray hymnal, hymn 323, "Break Not the Circle."
Okay, would you please gather hands for the closing words, please? Whatever we can do or dream we can do, let us begin it. Boldness has genius and power and magic in it. May we ever be bold in our living and in our loving. Can I hear an amen? Amen. Amen.
All righty then.